The rumble of motorcycles filled the air outside Jackson's Diner, a small roadside spot in rural Arizona where a group of Hells Angels had stopped for breakfast. The morning sun gleamed off chrome bikes, leather jackets and tattooed arms as the men laughed over pancakes and black coffee. They looked intimidating, bearded, broad, and battle-hardened, the kind of men most people avoided. But that morning, someone didn't avoid them. A small boy, maybe 7 years old, stood by the curb clutching a torn backpack. His jeans were too short, his t-shirt had holes, and his right eye was swollen purple, a fresh bruise under the skin. The bikers noticed him when one of them, Tank, looked up mid-laugh. The boy wasn't begging for money or candy. He was just staring, nervous and determined, as if building up the courage to say something. Tank elbowed his buddy Rex and nodded toward the kid. "Hey, you see that?" he murmured. The laughter faded. The whole table turned to look. The boy hesitated, his little sneakers scraping the pavement. Finally, he took a deep breath and started walking toward the group of bikers. The heavy sound of his small footsteps on gravel caught everyone's attention. A waitress froze inside the diner, watching through the window. When the boy reached the first motorcycle, he stopped. His lips trembled, but he didn't cry. Tank crouched down to meet him eye to eye. "Hey, little man," Tank said gently. "You lost or something?" The boy shook his head. "No, sir," he said softly. "I know who you are." "Oh, yeah?" Another biker, Diesel asked, half smiling. "And who are we?" The boy swallowed hard. "You're the Hells Angels." The men exchanged glances, a mix of pride and curiosity. "That's right," Tank said. "What can we do for you, champ?" For a long moment the boy didn't answer. His small hands twisted the strap of his backpack. Then he looked up, revealing the full bruise under his eye. "My mom says bikers protect people who can't protect themselves," he whispered. Tank's grin faded. The others went quiet. "Who gave you that shiner, kid?" Diesel asked, his voice calm but rough like gravel. The boy blinked, fighting tears. "The kids at school," he said. "'Cause I don't got a dad." The words hit like a punch. Every biker at that table, men who'd seen bar fights, prison time, and loss, suddenly went still. None of them said a word. The boy looked at Tank again, eyes wide and pleading. "Can you, maybe?" He hesitated, his voice breaking. "Can you be my dad?" A deep silence hung in the air. The sound of distant traffic faded. Tank slowly stood up, towering over the boy, his leather vest catching the light. He looked back at the other bikers. No one laughed. No one moved. Something inside that group of rough men shifted that morning, and it started with a bruised little boy asking for something more powerful than protection. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the distant hum of engines cooling in the parking lot. The boy's words hung in the air, quiet, trembling, yet powerful enough to break through the toughest hearts at that table. Tank crouched down again, trying to find the right words. "Hey, kid," he said softly, "you don't just ask someone that. That's a big thing to say." The boy looked down at his sneakers. "I know," he whispered, "but I just want someone who won't leave." That single sentence hit harder than any bar fight these men had ever been in. Diesel rubbed his beard, trying to hide his emotions. "Where's your mom, little man?" he asked. "And she's working." "Always working," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She's all I got. But the kids at school say their dads picked them up. I never had one." He looked up again, his eyes watery but brave. "I just thought, bikers look strong. Maybe one of you could be mine." The men exchanged heavy glances. Tank stood, motioning for the others to give them space. "What's your name, kid?" "Evan," the boy said. Tank nodded. "All right, Evan, let's sit." He guided the boy to a bench outside the diner. The others quietly gathered around, a circle of leather jackets, tattooed arms, and steel hearts. Evan told them everything, about the bullies who shoved him in the hallway, about the teacher who didn't care, about how his mom worked double shifts and still came home crying because she couldn't make rent. Every word came out like a confession, and not one biker interrupted him. When he finished, silence took over. Then Rex slammed his palm on the table. "That's it," he said. "We ain't letting that slide." Tank shot him a look, but Rex didn't back down. "We've seen punks like that before. Cowards picking on the weak." "Nah, not this kid. Not anymore. Diesel nodded in agreement. He's one of us now, he said firmly. You mess with one angel, you mess with all of us. Evan blinked, confused. Does that mean... Tank smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened his rough features. It means you got 32 uncles now, kid. Big loud ones. The bikers laughed, but there was no mockery in it, only warmth. One of them handed Evan a small leather patch that read, "Brotherhood never dies." "Keep this," he said. "Your family now." Evan held it close to his chest. For the first time in his young life, he felt safe. The fear, the loneliness, the ache, all of it melted away in the presence of these men society called dangerous. Tank looked around at his brothers. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice steady, "we're taking him to school. Not to fight, just to make sure everyone knows he's not alone anymore." The group nodded. Engines would roar again tomorrow morning, but this time they wouldn't be heading for a highway run. They'd be heading for justice. That night, as the sun dipped below the Arizona horizon, a small boy went to sleep smiling, his bruised face resting on a pillow beside a leather patch and a promise. He was no longer fatherless. The next morning, the sleepy town of Prescott, Arizona, woke to the thunder of 32 motorcycles echoing through the streets. Chrome glinted in the rising sun, and the air vibrated with the deep growl of Harley engines. The Hells Angels weren't headed for a rally or a bar fight that day. They were on a mission. At the front of the pack rode Tank, his red bandana tied tight, the club's patch stretched across his back. Behind him sat Evan, the little boy with a fading black eye, wearing a borrowed leather vest that nearly swallowed him whole. On the back, someone had written with a marker, "Little Angel." Cars pulled over, people stared, and phones came out to record. But Tank didn't care. This wasn't for show. This was family business. When they reached Prescott Elementary, the engines shut off one by one, the sudden silence almost deafening. Teachers froze at the windows. Kids on the playground stopped mid-swing, their mouths hanging open. 32 men in leather vests lined up in front of the school like an army. Tank lifted Evan off the bike and knelt down. "You ready, little man?" Evan nodded nervously. "What if they laugh again?" Tank grinned. "They won't, not today." Together they walked up the path toward the school doors. The principal, a tall woman with silver hair, rushed outside, her expression halfway between panic and awe. "Excuse me," she said sharply. "What is this?" Tank removed his sunglasses and smiled politely. "Just a few dads here to drop a kid off." The woman blinked. "A few?" she muttered under her breath. The other bikers laughed softly. Diesel stepped forward and gently patted Evan's shoulder. "This little guy's been having a rough time. We just figured his classmates should see he's got people looking out for him now." Inside, whispers spread like wildfire. By the time Evan entered his classroom, every kid was watching through the windows. The boys who used to mock him, the ones who'd called him names and pushed him around, suddenly found their desks very interesting. Evan took his seat quietly, trying not to smile too big. But when he looked out the window and saw 32 motorcycles gleaming in the sun, he couldn't help it. He beamed. During recess, Tank and a few others stood by the fence, talking with teachers and laughing with kids who dared to come close. The Hells Angels, men once feared by half the town, became instant heroes that morning. Before leaving, Tank crouched beside Evan again. "You remember what I told you?" Evan nodded. "Family don't leave." Tank ruffled his hair. "That's right, little angel. Family don't leave." The engines roared back to life, echoing down the streets as the bikers rode off one by one. Teachers waved, kids cheered, and the once bullied boys stood tall in the schoolyard, not scared, not small, but proud. That day, the town learned something powerful. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's found in the unlikeliest places, in the roar of engines, the smell of oil and leather, and the hearts of men who decided that one little boy deserved to be protected forever. And from that morning on, no one ever messed with Evan Little Angel Carter again.